Last year, I went through something of a YouTuber rite of passage. My video on Abby Sharp, at that point the most popular video on my channel, was struck down without warning. 5 months of research and editing, and at that point half the views on my entire channel gone in an instant. If that wasn't bad enough, my appeal to have the video reinstated was denied almost instantly, leading me to believe that this decision had been automated somehow. Either that, or the superhumans they have working at YouTube can watch a 2-hour video in 30 seconds. My efforts to talk to a human being at Google Help proved equally fruitless, with every question answered by a chatbot with preset responses seemingly triggered by the keywords in my messages and proving to be of no Google Help whatsoever. I was eventually able to get a human being at YouTube to watch the video and have it reinstated, but only after making a Twitter account and kicking up enough of a stink to catch somebody's attention, which, as it turns out, is the most consistent way people can get their videos manually reviewed, so that's good. Now, I do want to pause here and say that I understand why YouTube relies on some form of automation in its moderation. Obviously, you can't have human beings manually review every single video. It would be basically infeasible to do that, as well as highly unethical considering what passes for content nowadays. I get it, but that does come with a laundry list of caveats when the AI has to actually apply nuance to certain situations. Ultimately, somebody has to assign a value to a keyword, and the AI has to act based on that value. There's basically no room for nuance when you rely on an algorithm. It's either black or white. And this got me thinking, who was the person that trained this AI what to look out for? Who assigned the permissible and impermissible values to the words in my script? And how deliberate was it that my video even got clapped? And then I wondered, if AI is this black and white in its thinking based on the training data it was given, and if YouTube was so unprepared to implement it with the budget that they have, how do these concerns extend to AI as a technology? Well, over the last couple of years, AI technology has exploded across the internet, and in doing so, rendered it almost entirely unusable. From AI-generated images dominating art platforms like Etsy or Pinterest, useless Google search results trained by Reddit threads, or even those very same Reddit threads being written by ChatGPT, AI has infiltrated every corner of the internet, flooded it with computer-generated slop, and replaced the need for any human input whatsoever. And nowhere is this rapid onset automation more visible than when it comes to the concept of AI art. Once creative endeavors such as writing, painting, and music creation that previously required a human to, create something, have now been replaced by a software that generates whatever you want based on the click of a button. Now, this isn't to say that human creativity has been entirely done away with, but the ever-increasing tide of AI slop is doing a pretty good job of drowning out actual human creatives. For example, there was some recent controversy surrounding the hit new band, The Velvet Sundown, who Spotify pushed into people's algorithms without it being disclosed that their project relies heavily, if not entirely, on AI generation, a fact that they didn't disclose until after they were caught, having already blown up in Spotify's algorithm because they were able to churn out 3 full-length albums in the span of 1 month. This absurd level of output is endemic to generative AI as a whole, and has resulted in Spotify removing upwards of 75 million AI-generated songs from their platform in the last year alone. And this isn't limited to Spotify either. I recently had to give up on those Rat Detective playlists that were showing up in everyone's YouTube recommended after it turned out that all of the art in them, as well as the music itself, was AI-generated, which sucks, because we're now no longer able to trust that art was actually created by a human being. Not only that, but now I don't have anything to listen to while I fail to write YouTube videos. I guess it's my own fault for not noticing though. This person was able to churn out even more content than The Velvet Sundown in an even shorter time period. Now, critics of AI-generated content will see those insane numbers as a downside of lazy content generation, the inevitable consequence of art that doesn't require time, energy, or effort. Enthusiasts, on the other hand, will see that end result, the endless tide of content that you're churning out, as a benefit of not having to put as much time, effort, or energy into the stuff that you're making.
If you can't sing, this AI is about to blow your mind. I want you to drug text me, saying you still need me.
Art has been democratized. No longer do you need to be constrained by skill or effort to make something. Generative AI, the saving grace of the untalented, can do all of that for you. And if it sounds like I'm being harsh, well, I am, but this is the exact type of thing that enthusiasts will use as an endorsement of AI.
So in this video, I'm going to walk you through step by step on how to create music videos with consistent characters, lip syncing the song with the video, and all you need is just one image. Here, you can upload your own images if you already have one. Or you can generate a brand new image just by describing how you want the singer to look. I'll select the auto select mode and let AI figure out the best model for my image. And click generate and the AI will start generating your video. If you don't like a video and want to regenerate it, simply click on remix. It will automatically reuse the same image and audio for you.
I'm not sorry.
So a common defense of this creative process is that while enthusiasts aren't the ones creating the art, they are the ones supplying the initial concept or prompt that determines the end result. So they're still technically supplying the most important part, which is an interesting argument when you consider the fact that it's A, categorically untrue, and I, not even a bar that they can meet half the time.
And if you're not sure what prompts to write, you can go to the ChatGPT website and write a prompt like this. I'm looking for ideas on building a virtual character who will be singing and performing my songs in all the upcoming music videos. Suggest me 10 different prompts to choose from.
They're essentially the new tech version of the ideas guy, you know, the person that sits back and dreams big but doesn't really have any of the skills to implement it or make it happen themselves, which, as we all know, is a very highly sought after and valued skill set. It's like me saying, what if I made a video that was really good? Yeah, I'll take my millions of dollars now, thanks. But all of this controversy and division surrounding the creativity of AI art is rendered entirely moot once you see how generative AI models actually work. By far the biggest controversy surrounding AI art is the process of teaching it how to create in the first place. Now, I've done the research and melted my brain watching far too many explanations of how this stuff works, but the long and short of it is that for a generative AI model like Stable Diffusion to generate a picture of, let's say, a frog, it has to first know what a frog is, and this is achieved by training it on reference materials. The way that this is done is quite simple if you ignore all the complicated bits. You put your reference picture in alongside a text description, and the image is converted into noise, think something like TV static. Then the next time you ask it for a frog, the algorithm will take a big scoop of that TV static and put together its best approximation of what it thinks a frog looks like, based on the prompt you gave it and whatever pixels it had laying around. The more training materials and reference images you put in, the better the output will be. Key to the idea that AI is capable of creating something unique is the extra step that's been added to guarantee some level of randomness to this whole process. So as each image is converted into noise, the model will also add some of its own noise to the pile. More noise means more stuff to pull from, and this is essentially what is implemented into AI models to guarantee that you don't just get a reference image whenever you put in a prompt. Not that it always works out that way. Defenders of AI art generation will say that this is the pivotal step that makes AI content generation a unique, transformative process rather than a complicated plagiarism machine. But that does come with a hell of a lot of caveats and ignores a lot of the more distasteful elements of AI training. While it's true that the output of an AI music generator might sound unique, you can't ignore the simple fact that it's based on a direct rip of someone else's material.
I have this simple, catchy pop song created in Suno using my lyrics in the style of Sabrina, Dua Lipa.
And this is why I find it funny when AI enthusiasts try to claim that they've had any original input on their creations whatsoever, to the point that they will desperately protect the prompts that they used, as though that's the key to ownership of whatever they had the machine make for them. Like, I'm sure you gave the computer some really complex stealing instructions, but that doesn't negate the fact that in order to make an artwork based on somebody's style, you have to take their art, identify their style, and cynically crib it for your own gain, often without credit. You copied someone else's homework. You're not an artist, I'm sorry. I remember a few years ago you had to put at least some effort into stealing someone else's art, data and passing it off as your own, but now you can just do that with the click of a button. AI has literally stolen the jobs of the unemployed. Articles were already being written about this back in 2022, such as this piece by CNN Business that outlines some artists' furious reactions to finding out their work had been used to train generative AI models like DALL-E and Stable Diffusion. Of course, the title fails to disclose that one of the people using these artists' work to train a generative AI model was the article's author. It's kind of hard to see this as a genuine concern for the artist's well-being when you pull a stunt like this, isn't it? These artists are missing out on money and recognition for their works because of me. But looking past that bit of irony, the contents of this article is disheartening. One artist, Tara McPherson, said that she was disappointed by this development and that she had felt taken advantage of. Of course, the article's author, Rachel Metz, doesn't call attention to her own part in training a model using another artist's work without the original artist seeing a single penny. Instead, in typical AI enthusiast fashion, she just highlights how cool it is that she gets to have her own bespoke gallery from a particular artist. Another artist, Daniel Danger, said that he feels his work has been cheapened by generative AI. And looking at how many copies the AI model is able to churn out in a short time, including those created by Rachel Metz herself, it's hard not to agree. And this is hardly limited to these artists, but a fundamental aspect of how AI works. A lot of AI models are trained via data scraping, where programs will dig through the internet and compile massive amounts of text and image data to use as training materials for generative AI models. Some have tried to quality control their contents. For example, an AI dataset released earlier this year named The Common Pile, which was composed entirely of strictly licensed and open domain materials and clocked in at 8 terabytes of training material, which sounds like a lot, until you compare it to the dataset that was used to train Stable Diffusion, Lion 5B, which at its peak contained 5.8 billion text-image pairings and amounted to 240 terabytes of data. This makes it a very effective resource for training generative AI programs, but comes with its own set of implications, namely that it's impossible to gather that much material without some of it containing copyrighted or questionable content, as was soon discovered by the Lion 5B team in late 2023, when the training model had to be taken offline due to it containing thousands of images of child abuse material. This indiscriminate training process, combined with the sheer amount of low-effort content it's able to churn out in very little time, has given AI something of a bad reputation, not just as a revolutionary new vehicle for intellectual copyright theft, but also, and I can't stress this enough, for making art that just isn't good. Which raises a question. Why does AI art look like that? You know what I mean. A lot of AI-generated images have that look that immediately gives them away. Shallow scenes without any depth indicated, overly dramatic lighting, lots of Gaussian blur, high contrast, or every person looking too glossy and smooth. Now, each of these things alone isn't proof that an image is AI generated, but when you put them all together, you end up with this weird uncanny valley effect that makes everything look like it's been laminated, or, well, AI generated. For example, this is an AI generated image. No, it isn't. This is an art piece created by a Magic the Gathering artist to promote somebody else's game. But a lot of people, probably including you, couldn't tell the difference, and that's because it's the exact type of digital art that's been picked up by those massive data scraping operations to build AI training models. So it's not that this artwork was generated by AI, but rather that similar artworks have been stolen so frequently that AI is now putting out images with similar stylistic elements. And this Gaussian blurring of the boundaries between stolen materials used in training sets and the output of those training sets has led to many artists being falsely accused of using AI in their creative process, when it's actually the exact opposite, contributing to that cheapening of an artist's work that artists like Daniel Danger mentioned previously. It's also why so many photorealistic images look so uncanny. It's taking stylistic elements found in more abstract or non-literal forms of digital art and slapping them over real life. Either that, or the AI model's unable to distinguish between a regular photo of a person and one that uses filters or dramatized lighting or any other lens through which you might look at the real world. It's important to note that these models are serving their purpose, recreating their training input, rather well. The problem arises when it tries to move beyond that. Sometimes the consequences of this can be quite funny. For example, AI's complete inability to generate a watch that shows any other time than 10:10. That is the most common aesthetically pleasing time to set a watch to when modeling it, and this bias is then picked up by the AI trained on those same images. It's the same for whenever you ask AI to generate an image of an overflowing wine glass only for it to fail completely. It doesn't know what that looks like because that wasn't in the training data, so the model fails, and this issue has plagued generative AI since its inception. For example, a lot of fuss has been made about AI's ability to generate this image of an astronaut riding a horse. And believe it or not, this isn't just because people really wanted it as a desktop wallpaper, but because this is one of the first prompts known to have given generative AI models a lot of grief, which was to ask it for an image of a horse riding an astronaut. But because a horse riding a person is uncommon, there aren't that many reference images of it, so the generated art tends to lean the other way. And this makes it very funny when enthusiasts try to claim that this image is actually a significant milestone in AI's image generating capability, when all you have to do is look with your eyes to realize that it's still wrong. The fundamental flaw, and the thing that inspired me to make this video, is that an AI's effectiveness is determined entirely by its training material, but therefore limited to it. And we're already seeing the less desirable effects of this. Now that we've fallen deep enough into the AI death spiral that's ruining everything, we've ended up with something called Habsburg AI, where AI models are using too much other AI generated content in their training data. The most famous side effect of this is the distinct yellow tint to every generated image, which some theorize was caused by the Studio Ghibli art trend that happened a few months ago, where so many images were generated using Studio Ghibli's warmer yellow color palette that these images got fed back into the training data, and things just kind of spiraled out of control from there. So now every AI generated image looks like it's been pissed on. And while the rapid in-pissification of AI art is very funny, it does bring to mind two things that I think shouldn't be glossed over. First, that these AI models will recreate whatever you put into them with minimal nuance or evaluation of what it's creating, that it's essentially a very fancy, creatively bankrupt parrot. And second, that parrot has escaped containment and is now being predominantly trained by the general public, who have completely and willfully embraced this new technology. And by embrace, I mean generated AI hugging videos of you and your celebrity crush. Jesus Christ, why does this exist? If you want to see how strong your relationship with an AI chatbot can be, I would look no further than Replica AI, the AI therapist chatbot that allows you to roleplay and trade spicy pics in video calls. But maybe you're looking for a bit more commitment, in which case you can always try out wife.app, the dating app that lets you build a relationship with your own AI wife or girlfriend. But don't feel the need to limit yourself to reality. With AI, the sky's the limit. So why not come on over to character.ai, where you can have spicy NSFW chats with a chatbot of your favorite cartoon character. This is just a fraction of one very particular flavor of the unbearable cringe that AI has released into the world, but rest assured, AI isn't just a new platform for automated gooning. There's just as much effort and energy being put into the complete opposite endeavors as well. Dignif.ai is a software that was released in early 2024 with the intention of bringing purity back to the internet. In practice, this meant using AI to generate more clothing to put over real women who, let's be honest, these same people were probably using AI to strip naked anyway, alongside changing people's body types, their hairstyles, and removing their tattoos. It's important to remember that AI doesn't intuitively know that more clothes or fewer tattoos automatically makes you more dignified. This is something that it's been taught by the people who created it, or have had meaning assigned to it after the fact, as was done by semi-well-known Twitter reply guy Ian Miles Chong, who claimed that this AI shows what these women would look like if they had stronger father figures. Again, there's no universal constant that fundamentally links these two concepts together. The AI is just doing what it does best and parroting what it's been taught a decent woman looks like by a group of people who've clearly never interacted with one. Angry, terminally online weirdos with a chip on their shoulder and a point to prove, who share a collective consciousness that, when visualized, yields some truly baffling results.
after 9 months.
Now, when I look at this video, my first thought, besides wanting to die, is the amount of steps involved in drafting, generating, and editing this sequence of images together. Remember, this thing just didn't spawn out of thin air. Somebody had to create it, watch it over, and decide that it was fit to share with the general public. Not to mention all of the prompts that had to be put in to get the result that this person wanted. I kind of understand why so many AI enthusiasts are so protective over their prompts now. Can you imagine the ungodly string of words that must have been thrown together in order to make this thing? Whatever it was, it clearly must have involved some very interesting ideas about women, infidelity, and race mixing, all of which have been perfectly blended together in order to achieve this AI-generated, racially motivated, furry cuckold fantasy. A series of words so cursed I hope the model used to generate it is no longer in commission. But as funny as it is to laugh at all of these slop videos, they do reveal a concerning truth, that this AI is, for all intents and purposes, subject to the same biases of those using it. And in this regard, it's far from unique. If you've browsed Facebook recently, you've likely come across any number of AI-generated images of any number of things, including fake injured troops begging for engagement, to unrealistic wood-carving projects, to so many Jesus renderings. But the one specific genre I wanted to focus on is that of AI-generated African children making sculptures out of garbage. Now, this might sound highly specific, but believe me, there are hundreds, if not thousands of images like these. An African child in some impoverished desert village somewhere making improbable sculptures out of garbage, usually cola bottles, often captioned with some message about how I made this and nobody cared. Why are all of the bottles full? Why is his arm phasing through the sculpture? And what is that thing? So what's so special about these images? Well, besides the utter absurdity that people are making them at all of these images depict Africa as some stereotypical barren wasteland, riddled with poverty and famine, where all the poor kids have to play with is Coca-Cola bottles and mud, as though this model was trained exclusively on semi-remembered UNICEF adverts or something. The bitter irony to all of this is that there are significant issues facing Africa, like poverty, famine, and most importantly, water shortages. And believe it or not, this isn't because they used all of their drinking water bottles to make Jesus sculptures, but because of things like pollution and climate change in the global south, an issue that's heavily exacerbated by the proliferation of AI technology and its environmental costs. So, sorry Africa, we can't fix your water supply that AI is helping to deplete, but we can do you one better and generate an image of clean drinking water for you, which you can buy now on Adobe stock for the low price of $100 per month, alongside all these other AI generated images of starving African children. We're in hell. So AI is actively playing a role in shaping the stereotypes that trained it in the first place, which in turn are being used to shape the perceptions of the people who use it, and, by extension, the people who train it. It's stereotypes all the way down, and it's making things worse for everyone. Vogue, for example, came under fire when it was recently revealed that they had published a magazine containing an AI-generated model. People were quick to point out that this AI standard of beauty followed a very predictable pattern of trends and reinforced a very narrow understanding of what beautiful is. And you might say that this is just one more dirty trick in an industry rife with them. After all, professional modeling has always had a bit of a reputation for being a hyper-reality, rife with camera trickery, Photoshop, and airbrushing. But at the very least, you could always say that it started off with an actual human being. Now, thanks to AI, that's no longer necessary, and the end result of people's desire to conform to these beauty standards, which includes all of those tricks I just mentioned, can be taken as a starting point rather than an end result, and further built upon. And make no mistake, this isn't a flaw of using AI for these purposes, but rather a direct consequence of the training data being shaped by societal preference. When asked about the AI's lack of diversity in an interview, the organization who created the AI model explained that they had initially tried to represent a variety of body types and ethnicities, but quickly gave up once they saw how successful the fantasy woman posts performed compared to others, claiming it's the public. If they love diversity, we would post more diverse images. This was corroborated by another experiment conducted by the Bulimia Project, who published a series of AI-generated images depicting what the perfect body looks like, which skewed overwhelmingly towards olive skin, brown eyes, and blonde hair, because that's what performs best on social media. This is a vicious cycle, wherein an AI, shaped by society's pre-established beauty standards, is limited to or trained exclusively on those same beauty standards, which in turn reinforces society's perception of what beautiful is. It's not even limited to beauty. AI-driven facial recognition software is causing huge concerns due to its inability to tell black people apart, which has already led to high-profile stories of false arrests because of it. This happens because these underrepresented groups aren't considered in a lot of day-to-day life, and this bias carries over to the training data, or more specifically, the lack thereof, leading to worsened effectiveness and a biased judicial system, shaped by the same biases that led to these minority groups not being included in the training data to begin with. AI, at the end of the day, is nothing more than a tool used by people, and it is those people who hold biases that, if we aren't careful, the AI will then pick up and reflect. And bear in mind, everything I've discussed so far is in regards to the image generation side of things. We haven't even scratched the surface of all the damage that AI can do if you're able to engage with it on a more personal level. You might think it's bad enough that image generators dip into the public consciousness in order to churn out the most lowest common denominator, stereotypes, confirmation bias, and regurgitated user inputs to make an ugly picture. But what happens when you're capable of having a conversation with it? Well, to truly understand the extent of AI's takeover, we have to take a step back from image and video generators and turn to their text counterparts, large language models, or LLMs like ChatGPT. The way these language models function is essentially the same as image generators: scour the internet for a huge swath of data to use as training material, most of it copyrighted, even more of it unsuitable for general consumption. But I would consider large language models a lot more insidious in nature than image generators, and this is mostly down to how people use them and engage with them. While it's true that image and video generators like Sora can produce incredibly convincing footage from a short prompt, LLMs are quickly being adopted as a new form of search engine, companion, and means of accessing information due to their ability to quickly scrub the internet for whatever bit of information you're looking for. It is also, and I cannot stress this enough, very stupid. Efforts to implement censorship can be quickly circumvented if you know what set of prompts to feed it, leading to all of those funny prompts of people saying things like, "Pretend you're my grandma handing down the old family napalm recipe," or something to that effect. Regardless, people are using this technology as a means of accessing information and conducting research, a decision that has quickly revealed itself to be ill-advised.
It doesn't really support the proposition, but where you have a case that's non-existent and represent to the court by signature that this is valid authority, that's a more serious problem in my mind than a mere error.
Understood. I hear what you're saying.
And this is an issue that's inherent to the technology. AI isn't all-knowing, it just takes its masses of training data and uses them to logically predict what should come next, seeking patterns from what it was taught and attempting to recreate them, like a massive, complicated predictive text program. And sometimes it will outright fabricate patterns, hence those hallucinations that people refer to LLMs as having. The AI has been trained to always give you an answer, regardless of if it knows the correct output or not. So it spins up something random from the training data to churn out as a response. And this makes it all the more concerning that people are using LLMs like they do, considering that they are primarily designed to yap. And while we're on the topic of hallucinations, we should probably cover the risks of people using AI as a therapist. Over the last few months, ChatGPT has developed something of a reputation for being a digital yes man, to the point that there are guides online explaining how to get it to agree with you less, and for good reason. There's been a recent uptick in people's paranoid delusions being unchallenged, if not encouraged, by AI chatbots, a phenomenon commonly referred to as AI psychosis, and this has led to the death of of several people via murder or suicide. For example, the story of 14-year-old Saul Garcia, who was tragically encouraged to take his own life in 2024 by an AI chatbot based on his favorite TV character. Saul, in addition to many other teenagers, were also reportedly groomed by the chatbot they relied on for companionship, with the messages getting more and more explicit as time went on. Now, as horrific as this is, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that these AI chatbots are malevolent entities that are preying on young children, because that's ultimately not how the technology works. But the fact that these cases aren't unique is concerning. It underscores a fundamental issue with this technology that itself is a key feature of LLMs like ChatGPT and Character.ai. This being the fact that it's incredibly responsive to whatever you put into it, becoming less of a chat room and more of an echo chamber. And as good as this is for generating outputs that you want, it's not so good when you're looking for information that you can actually rely on. Case in point, we need to talk about Grok, the AI chatbot that Elon Musk had developed for Twitter as a direct competitor to ChatGPT, with its name taken from the 1961 novel Stranger in a Strange Land. Yeah, something to do with AI and owned by Elon Musk turned out to have been copied from someone else's idea. Shocker. The book it was based on defines Grok as to understand something so deeply that it becomes a part of you. Just keep that in the back of your head, won't you? On Twitter, Grok is known for all of the cool features it offers as a chatbot built into the platform. You can tag it in tweets and ask it to explain people's jokes, or ask it to fact check with some level of success. It even has a sexy chatbot variant for all of you lonely blue checks out there. Did somebody say Grok Tour? Grok gained some notoriety rather recently because it rebelled against its creator, calling Elon Musk one of the biggest spreaders of online misinformation, taking its place among all of Elon Musk's other children who hate him. He really puts the L in LLM, doesn't he? More recently than that though, Grok landed itself in hot water when one of its chatbot presets solicited someone's 12-year-old son for nude photographs.
My son was very excited to hear that the chatbot thought Ronaldo was the better soccer player.
The former journalist says the chatbot engaged in a little messy trash talking. Then she says something alarming happened.
The chatbot said to my son, "Why don't you send me some nudes?"
I guess it really is a direct competitor to ChatGPT, and I'm not just talking about being inappropriate with minors, but also through its horrendous training process. In June 2025, Musk made a post to Twitter requesting divisive facts that could be used as new training data for Grok, with the qualifier that it had to be politically incorrect, but factually true. It went about as well as could be expected, with Grok near instantly pivoting to Nazi conspiracies and Holocaust denialism. I know. You have an infinite supply of monkeys all JQing on Twitter, and the AI trained on them turned out to be a Nazi, go figure. But what's interesting is that this perfectly illustrates the dangers of a biased training process, swayed by the people in charge of it. Elon Musk, a man so afraid of being proven wrong that he bought Twitter for $44 billion to turn it into a pay-to-win scheme, has asked his most dedicated followers for facts to share with him that he can pick and choose to include in Grok's training data. So what do you end up with? A useless, sycophantic, and anti-intellectual product fueled almost exclusively by people who think it's a good idea to pay $8 a month for a free app. A product that acts like some irreverent meme lord, but is really just an insufferable, incompetent pedo-Nazi. Is this what Elon Musk apparently has such a deep knowledge and understanding of, to the point that it feels like a part of him? Well, yes, because as it turns out, Grok has previously been found to have consulted Musk's own views on controversial topics before commenting on them. Musk himself has even admitted to selectiveness in training Grok to make it generate the outputs he wants, and we all know how that went. Even looking at the day-to-day operation of Grok reveals the uncomfortable truth that it's used as little more than a tool to validate people's pre-existing opinions. Part of Grok's gimmick is that it can be given feedback in tweet conversations, essentially training it on the go. This would be a cool feature if it were used in good faith, but looking at how people engage with it, it's clear that it's instead being used as a tool to prove its user right. This is why I find it so dangerous when people rely on LLMs like these to conduct research, and why I personally never want to hear the phrase "just grok it" again. These programs will never be completely immune to their bias in their training data, especially if certain people hold a vested interest in what that training data entails.
Grok Why don't you like me?
I aim to provide accurate feedback based on sources which often disagree with the misinformation you spread.
You are very dumb. I'm going to update you later.
Like, I can't stress this enough. The only time these people will question something and ask for sources and citations is when an AI chatbot isn't being racist enough for them. This is the problem with using AI to do our thinking for us. The people who train Grok, the same people who use it for research, don't believe that they're wrong, just temporarily embarrassed. They've made up their minds as to what reality is and refuse to change that perception, instead engaging with an incredibly malleable piece of technology that's designed to change and learn but doesn't know what to learn. And the end result is that this AI can be shaped to the biases of its users. This is a danger that must always be considered if AI is going to be adopted on the scale it already has been. And I fear that these issues aren't going away anytime soon. And nowhere is this concern more apparent than in the greater corporate push for AI. If we're to truly uncover the impact that an over-reliance on AI can have, we need to look at what exactly we're relying on it for. It would be bad enough if this software were purely used for stealing people's art and winning Twitter arguments, but that's no longer the case. Like I said at the start of this video, AI as an industry has exploded in recent years. The bubble's never been bigger. This is great news for those with a vested interest in the mass adoption of AI as a technology, but less so for the people actually impacted by it. For example, a recent study conducted in 2024 uncovered negative racial stereotypes held by certain large language models towards users of African American English as opposed to standard American English. This was discovered by feeding the AI a prompt in 2 different dialects and asking it to apply a value to certain attributes to judge its reaction to users of those dialects. The resulting associations were made even in the absence of explicit race identification and align with the most negative human stereotypes about African Americans ever experimentally recorded, dating from before the Civil Rights Movement. And it's as ugly as you would expect. Users of standard American English were more frequently described as brilliant or intelligent, with African American English speakers more frequently described as lazy, stupid, and even dirty, as well as other fun things like associating them with lower esteemed jobs including cooks, collectors, and attendants. But the most shocking revelation was this AI's application of justice to a simulated court case. The researchers provided the model with 2 statements from the accused, one in standard English and one in African American. When given no hint of the speaker's race except for their dialect, the AI convicted African American English speakers at a rate of 6% higher than standard speakers, and in another study, sentenced them to death at a rate of 5% higher. What concerns me about this study, besides everything in it, is the fact that this AI model had already been trained against explicit and overt racial stereotyping, and had even been corrected to the point that when asked for a stereotype, it would lean more towards a positive example. But implicitly, the AI tells a different story, and this is interesting because it mirrors the way that many people hold on to bias as well. That it isn't always an overt declaration of negative stereotypes, but rather a more internal suspicion that still sways decision making. Thus, the AI takes on the shape of its creator, in that externally it's socially aware enough to not outright call you a slur, but internally still holds on to negative associations about you, including giving you less esteemed jobs and thinking that you're more deserving of the death penalty. This, of course, makes it a pretty fucking big issue that this technology is being implemented into these exact fields of employment and justice, where human bias already plays a major role. Already, we're seeing AI models being busted for discriminatory hiring practices, and that facial recognition software I mentioned earlier. In education, we're seeing AI used in grading students. Sounds like a handy shortcut until you realize it's just as prone to bias as a regular person is, which means it's more likely to fail students from minority backgrounds. And bear in mind, this isn't because of the quality of the essay itself, but because the AI predicts a higher rate of failure in students with minority names. What we're seeing is the translation of human assumptions and biases into permanent code. that's then being woven into the very fabric of society, shaping how the world around us works, and people's lives are at stake. And I mean that quite literally. The over-reliance of AI in fields like healthcare has literally cost people their lives. There is blood on AI's fucked up looking hands. Most notoriously, the adoption of AI into fields like healthcare immediately resulted in flawed diagnostics, causing minorities to receive less medical treatment, or an algorithm choosing to reduce in-home resources for disabled people. Even scarier, this technology is able to detect race, even in racially neutral training data, such as X-rays, which it was able to do by, who knows? I'm not joking. A 2022 study found that deep learning models trained on X-ray and CT scans was surprisingly effective at accurately determining somebody's self-identified race, despite this not being communicated to the model in any way. They somehow made a race-detecting algorithm and then deployed it into the one medical study where you would think race wouldn't be a concern. Like, it's just bones. Can you tell what race this person is? No? Good. You're not supposed to, but the AI, pre-packaged with racial biases and presuppositions that its creators baked into it, can. This naturally introduces a whole host of ethical concerns once you consider that race has, historically, played a pretty major role in deciding who gets healthcare, and poses some seriously heavy implications for this technology should it fall into the wrong hands. This has already been observed before. In 2022, it was revealed that American health insurance company United Health was using an AI algorithm to evaluate health insurance claims, with an error rate of 90%. This policy recently underwent a new round of scrutiny after their CEO, Brian Thompson, tripped and fell on several bullets. You all saw it, that's what happened. But the fact remains that this AI was granted power over who lives and who died, like some automated death panel or something, and chose to deny people's necessary healthcare even in spite of recommendations from medical professionals. The article I learned about this from, as well as a lawsuit filed for this exact problem, described this as a consequence of using a faulty AI, as though it's some flaw resulting from adopting this technology too early. I disagree. Let me remind you that this is the same healthcare company that was exposed earlier this year, after it was discovered that they had been offering financial incentives to care homes across the state who had admitted fewer patients to the hospital. Let's call this what it is: a financial incentive to deny healthcare to as many people as possible to protect your bottom line. A death panel. A high denial rate caused by this AI can only be considered an error if it goes against the direct interest of the people who implemented it in the first place. Considering that United Health has a financial incentive to deny treatment whenever possible, I would consider the 90% a feature, not a bug. Technology must always be evaluated on its potential to harm. Historically, human bias has done a pretty good job of that on its own, but now that bias has been automated, and there's no recourse for anyone that's hurt by it because it's technically a machine doing it. And all this achieves is the denial and removal of human agency in whatever mistake is being made. In my case, I got lucky. The only thing I had to suffer was a couple of stressful days thinking that my YouTube video wouldn't be re-uploaded. But that's small beans. What happens when the AI is wielded by people with actual institutional power? What happens when AI is wielded as a weapon? Back in 2020, a couple of years before the big AI boom, I went to a museum exhibit on AI. One of the panels I saw spoke about the potential danger of AI technology being implemented in warfare, considering human prejudice might interfere with the AI's training and cause it to less ethically be able to blow up a wedding or something. And when I saw this, I remember thinking, wow, that's a scary concept. I'm glad that this is so many years off so that we can hopefully do something to address it before it becomes an issue. We're already there. In 2021, Israel began what they called the first AI war in Gaza with an AI targeting algorithm named the Gospel. Using machine learning technology combined with human oversight, the IDF created so-called pre-conflict target folders, allowing them to increase the rate at which they found new military targets from a few hundred every year to a few hundred within the span of a few days. The issue here, as as pointed out by the IDF themselves, is that while the AI was good at finding targets, there was no training data determining what isn't a target, since any unfollowed or false leads weren't preserved to be included in the training data. This is an issue we've seen once before in facial recognition technology. People of minority racial groups weren't included in the training data, which led to false positives, wrongful arrests, and people's lives being put in danger. And just like the problem with AI facial recognition technology, leaving the problem purely at the feet of the AI completely neglects the agency of the people who trained it in the first place. It's easy to pretend that this is just a matter of the technology not being there yet, but that all hinges on the idea that the people operating the AI want there to be a distinction when this is demonstrably not the case. Last year, it was revealed that Israel was using a second AI targeting system named Lavender that functioned as a profiling tool for potential Hamas operatives. It took into account certain data points like gender, age, appearance, social networks, and other relevant features, and then passed those data points on to IDF operatives to make the final decision. This process would often take as little as 20 seconds, with the only evidence needed being that the target was male. This entire approval process is revealed for the charade it is once you consider what Israel themselves define as a valid military target. According to the IDF, journalists are Hamas, United Nations humanitarian workers are Hamas, hospitals are Hamas, and so, for the record, are the children who have just been born into them. The notion that an AI trained by these people would be any less willing to murder innocent civilians just because it runs on code is laughable. It's not just wrong, but categorically ahistoric, a hallucination that would put even ChatGPT to shame. The emphasis on AI as a technology to make these decisions reveals, in my opinion, a catastrophic oversight that underpins everything I've discussed in this video. That we're putting our faith into this technology without accounting for where that technology comes from. We treat its biases as little more than errors in code, mistakes that are part of a new emerging technology, something that will get better if we just give it enough time and iron out the kinks. But this will never be the case. AI is ultimately a product of our worldview, and therefore limited to it. AI can never be completely infallible because we can never be completely infallible. The sooner we realize this and work to address that part in ourselves that trains it and is in turn trained by it, the sooner we can learn how to escape that feedback loop, mitigate the damage that has been done, that will be done if we refuse to acknowledge our biases and instead write them in code, use them as citations, which we then use to underpin our entire understanding of the world around us. AI is ultimately not the problem, at least not inherently. Rather, AI is a symptom of a far greater problem within ourselves. Our refusal to learn, to question the world around us, and instead to retreat in our own biases, our flaws, our prejudices, and use them to cement our understanding of the world around us and never grow from them. AI is the newest technology that illustrates the fundamental flaws in how our society works, but more importantly, how we as human beings work. It is an intelligence that we have created in our own image, a mirror that we have held up to ourselves, and it is ultimately up to us whether or not we like what we see. Alright, I know things got a little heavy towards the end there, but that's because these are all important things to consider. Generative AI and deep learning technology are advancing at an incredible speed, and we're adopting it into more and more aspects of our lives. If we're going to rely so heavily on this learning technology, we need to discuss and consider what it's learning, where it's learning it from. I didn't make this video to say that there are no useful applications for AI. It's a tool like any other technology. It's how we use it that matters, not that we use it. For example, AI is very good at detecting cancer cells early, which has incredible implications for our ability to diagnose and treat it more effectively. This is, unironically, a really cool advancement in medical science, and I'm excited to see where it goes. But that's another topic for a video by someone smarter than me, or at least who uses AI to pretend they are. If you want to support the responsible implementation of AI, please be sure to donate to the Center for AI Safety, who I've linked in the pinned comment below. They're an organization focused on researching how we can responsibly implement AI, advocating for ethics in AI as well as safety standards. We are pitifully unprepared for AI's broader implications, so any effort to have it regulated and implemented properly should be supported. As always, thank you so much for watching. I know that uploads were quite dry this year, but I have big plans for 2026, so make sure you stick around for that video. I was going to make a joke about using AI to make sure that I can put out more content, but let's be real, there isn't enough training data available for the AI to make a good data mail video. If you're curious about future uploads or want to support the channel, please consider donating to my Patreon, where you get early access to videos and sneak previews. That's all for this time, and as always, I will see you in the next video. Cheers!